This is the France 24 debate. We're talking about how to fix football after that big press conference by Europol denouncing a string of matches, hundreds of them, in 15 nations. With us to talk about it, Declan Hill. He's in Toronto, reporter, author of The Fix, Soccer and Organized Crime. Welcome back, sir. Welcome back as well to Eurosport Deputy Head of News, Andreas Evagora. Mark Owen, who... France 24's very own Mark Owen, and Michel Coutouzis, author in French of Crime. What is it again? I've lost my notes because I wrote it down in French. Let's see. It's crime. Say it in French.
Crime, trafic et réseau.
So crime, trafficking, and networks. It's all about the informal economy.
Politics of the informal economy.
The informal economy. We were talking just before the break and about the issue of online gambling and how it works. But again, this is the question I have for you. Here in France, we saw the case recently. There was the captain of the country's handball team, who, with other players on the team, bet on the halftime score. And the betting parlor, the online betting agency, noticed there was this unusual activity. They flagged it, and now he's in big trouble. Isn't it becoming more and more regulated, online betting? Isn't it easier now to crack down on syndicates who might bet on things like what the score might be at halftime?
I don't know what he did exactly, or if he did something.
He got caught.
Yes, he got caught, but we don't know exactly on what and in what procedure. But if he was clever, he could bet through Asia, and then nobody will know anything. This is internet. This is so. Of course, here we go there in very specific problems. For example, the operator of the internet operator. He is not allowed to look what's going on inside. The server, he's not allowed to see what's going on. So we have problems of control of the whole system and. Obviously, everybody wants that it stays like that, me included. This is not the issue. The issue is that why we allow today some activities like bets to get a general covered around the world, and why we don't stay in his own home.
Andreas Evagora?
You've got to take a step back. Football and betting now are intrinsically linked. They're as linked as horse racing and betting. Yeah. In the Premier League in England, 7 of 20 teams have betting companies as their sponsor. Real Madrid, the biggest club in the world, sponsored by, I won't name their name, but a very big betting company. Don't forget, most gambling in Asia is illegal. So once football lets the genie out of the bottle and is so dependent on betting and is so dependent on Asia, you go to a Premier League game in England now, the advertising hoardings are in Chinese or another Asian language, advertising betting on that particular match. So football's got to look at itself very closely. They can't hold their hands up and say, well, how is this happening to us?
Declan Hill, isn't this good news? Isn't it bringing things from the informal into the formal economy where you can have levers, where you can, for instance, shut down the betting if there's unusual activity?
Sorry, you're speaking to me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. The Skype line is quite bad. Yes, I think that's an excellent question. I think the observations so far have been very, very good. Look, I'm going to return to what I said right at the beginning of our debate. We're looking at a new form of corruption. It's a new form of globalized corruption. We've never seen it before in the same way we've never seen globalization before. And we really have to start identifying new ways of regulating things that we've never done before. There is, and I'll give your viewers just one example. There's a betting company in Asia. I won't mention their name, but I'm pretty sure most of our viewers will never have heard of this company. However, they've probably heard of the sports manufacturing company Adidas or Adidas. That one bet company in Asia has a gross revenue 4 or 5 times larger than Adidas. And they've never heard of them. This is the power of that Asian gambling market.
Right, but it's becoming becoming more and more regulated with levers where the bets are off if in cases where there is unusual activity.
No, not in Asia. And that's where 90% of the fixing goes on. When I was reading the reports around this recent handball case, I thought if nothing else, those players and their girlfriends should be charged with gross stupidity, because all the bets in that case were all placed locally and they were placed with European-based gamblers. If a company, if there was somebody who wanted to make a bet on a sporting event and they didn't want their tracks covered, just place it in Asia, and there's just not going to be a trace.
There's one very easy way of cutting out most match fixing, which is something that FIFA has rejected for years, which is TV evidence, because then referees wouldn't be making these calls and mistakes. If it went to a panel of 3 people, an offside or a ball over the line, there'd be no debate, because this is where most match fixing is, a referee making a mistake.
So Platini's against that? Blatter's against that? I mean,
well, I'm not suggesting they're against it because they're supporting match fixing, but the easiest way to really cut the legs off all of this is to say, well, have a
like they do in rugby. You go to the video replay.
Rugby, every sport apart from football, apart from the biggest sport, uses TV evidence. And the easiest way to stop all this would be, if there's a controversial decision, take it to TV replay, and then end of story.
All right. Well, let's hear from the head of the European footballing body, Michel Platini, calling match fixing the biggest threat to the sport. Strong words he reiterated at the outset of Euro 2012.
Those who are found guilty of fixing matches should never play football again. That's our responsibility, your responsibility. That's the heart of football. That is treachery at the heart of football.
Should never play football again.
treachery at the heart of football. That's a great way to put it. I mean, I recall...
Should never play football again. In baseball, that's the case since 1919. Is it the case in football?
Well, they should ban people. I mean, obviously, the case that Andreas was talking about earlier involving English players in the 1960s, there were 3 players that I can name who, received life bans because of that. And I think that's right, isn't it? People should be banned if they're fixing matches because they're interfering with, amongst other things, kids' dreams. A kid goes to a match to watch a match to have that dream fulfilled.
Right now, Andreas, let's talk about a concrete example. There's a case in Italy being investigated. Among those who there's a cloud of suspicion over include the Lazio captain, Stefano Mauri. What's going to happen to these guys?
We can go back a case. The 2011 match fixing scandal in Italy. The result was a 6-point deduction for Atlanta. 6 points, that's ridiculous. That's losing 2 games. Some teams have been fined €50,000 for being involved in match fixing.
€50,000 is like it's like the tonic bill peanuts, for one professional player, isn't it?
I should underline, some officials have been banned for life, but a 6-point ban, a 6-point deduction for match fixing is laughable. A €50,000 fine is faintly ridiculous. So there are clear-cut cases, as your other speakers have said. This isn't sort of just rumour and hearsay. There have been clear-cut cases, and the punishments have been laughable.
Michel Coutouzis, how, in the case, for instance, of Italy, because these match-fixing cases come up again and again, how do you stop them?
I think you don't stop them. I'm a pessimist in that way because the way things go is that we give more and more weapons to get in very massive way the corruption on the sport. We give those weapons. The problem is how a local problem becomes an international, then a global problem. This is the issue because, as we all said, that fixing a match, fixing a game, it's all like the Olympic Games. It's very old, but it was always restricted in an area, in a country, in a village, in a town. Now it's global, and this is impossible to fix, except if we control and we banish bets on internet. So this is why I say it is impossible, because the show must go on.
But if you
ban, time is money.
If you ban bets on the internet, then the betting will just go underground.
But they were underground, and this is the reason that we legalize all that, and we did that officially to allow the government to get some money of that. But again, it was a very marginal issue 15 years ago, and now it's a global issue. Generalized by in any party in the world.
Mark Owen, are you
supporting that and actually
Mark Owen, are you as fatalistic?
Oh, completely. I mean, if you consider the words of Diego Maradona, I think it was, who said that, cheating's actually part of the game. We try to con the ref, we try to con this, we try to do that. It's endemic, it's human nature to cheat in some ways. I don't think it's about...
And yet you sit down every Saturday to watch your beloved Everton.
Yeah.
Why?
Only when I can get there, it's fantastic, because, it's a dream you believe in, you hope that it's going to be played in the right spirit, you think it's going to be like that, and hopefully you believe. I suppose that's what it's about. It's about that faith. But I mean, taking money out of the game, I don't think that will actually solve anything.
All right. For some, the problem starts at the top. I don't know if you read last week's France Football, fresh allegations of bribes to federation representatives to secure Qatar's rights to the 2022 World Cup. Andreas Evagori had just mentioned a moment ago what FIFA and UEFA could do. Declan Hill, do you think a large part of the problem it does come from above?
I think that at this moment, at this very precise moment, February 2013, the solution to match fixing is actually very easy. We don't actually need television. We don't need legalization of gambling, because at this very brief moment, we actually know who the fixers are. We know their names. We know their birth dates. We know where they live. We know their addresses. There's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of pages of evidence of their work in Europe. Much of it's available on the internet if our viewers want to go and see this. There have been international arrest warrants served against these people, and their national governments in Asia have refused to act. That's the greatest scandal about match fixing right now. I take the point that once we arrest these guys, in 2-3 years, they'll be replaced by other people. But what a great education it would be for those people thinking of entering our sport to fix it, knowing that the first generation of fixers of this globalized fixing that we're speaking about were locked up. But at this moment, it's not happening. They're walking around free. And that's the problem. And so, and by the way, if anybody doubts what I'm saying, please go on the internet. You can see all this stuff. The public record about who these fixers are is very, very clear out there. And the Singaporean government...
Andreas Evagor, that brings us back to the point that the clip we heard from Michel Platini, the head of UEFA, saying that they should have life bans. Why isn't it happening if he's saying it?
Well, for various reasons. In Italy, people are scared of undermining the product they have. But I come back to the basic point. Football clubs, associations are promoting gambling. You go onto any club site, the club I support, they have their own gambling company. Football can't, on the one hand, say to its public and to the wider world, gamble, it's a great thing. But on the other side, when it's the kind of gambling they don't like, hold their hands up. I agree, actually, it might be a little bit too late. If we simply arrest the people who are at the heart of this now, a new set of people will replace them. But football really has to look at itself, I think, much more closely, because they're promoting actively gambling every day of the week. And I think every day, 3 billion euros are gambled on football. And it's this enormous industry. And football, not only is it not doing anything to control it, it's actively promoting it. And as we saw from the reactions to the Europol press conference, many are just saying, well, we don't believe it and it's not true, and putting their heads in the sand yet again. But
the fast butt mentality is something that is throughout every layer of football, isn't it? I mean, I can recall from my own experience, sort of going back to when I worked as an intermediary for an agent, being approached by someone saying he was the president of a North African club, telling me to go and ask prominent Premier League managers in England how much they wanted in their back pocket to sign their players. Now, if that's their approach, and I'm saying, well, hang on a minute, that's called breaking the law. I can't do that. So what kind of an agent are you? There you go. So that's kind of very much what the philosophy is. And I think it's from the bottom right to the very top.
All right, and the propensity to cheat, it's interesting. The story, of course, front page news in France this Tuesday, and even though officially no French club is tainted so far, the head of the French online betting authority said in an interview with French tabloid Libération that it's easier to accept money to lose than to take a substance to win. An allusion there to doping, but that doesn't mean there is no doping. In Monday's edition of Spanish sports daily AS, the former president of Real Sociedad saying his club paid out to doping doctor Eufemiano Fuentes for what he called strange drugs. Inaki Badiola, who ran the club in 2008, saying it happened over 6 years, saying that more than 300,000 euros was spent annually, undeclared. including the year La Real finished second. 6 years. That means it happened on the watch of a certain Jose Luis Asturiazaran, who now just happens to be head of the Spanish Football Federation. This was his rebuttal. If I had knowledge or suspicion, I would have taken the proper, forceful, and diligent action. Andreas Evagora, your thoughts on that?
Well, that's interesting what he's saying. I mean, I think all of this has taken some of the people in football by surprise. They weren't expecting. The thing that's really annoyed, for instance, the Premier League in England was they weren't informed that this press conference was happening. And now it's all about media management, isn't it? Now Europol are being criticised for coming out with this news before telling the Spanish authorities or the English authorities. Going back to what you're saying about what you can do about it, again, it's about that range of bets. For instance, the Premier League would like to stop betting on very small things, number of corners, number of yellow cards. If this was just about betting on who's going to win a match and who's going to lose a match, it would be much, much easier, because I'm convinced the vast majority of bets are not on, with all respect to Libération, how to win or lose a match. Going to tennis, for instance, you can very easily bet on who will win the fifth game of the second set of a tiny tournament anywhere around the world. I mean, how on earth are you going to control that? It's similar to football. How can you control, the number of red or yellow cards? These bets are kind of worthless.
Can you regulate it, Michel Couzis? Can you do what Andreas is saying and actually narrow down what you can actually bet on?
At least it will be a progress, because the less you have chances to cheat, the best it is. Of course, if you can bet on everything in China, they bet, excuse me, on the color of the pants of the neighbor. They between neighbors. You understand? This is so.
Are they looking for television evidence?
Yeah. First, you have to restrain a maximum, if we can't stop completely, the way that people bet and what you are allowed to do or to bet or not. This is, of course, obvious. It's obvious.
All right.
Stop spot betting. That's it.
Stop spot betting. Unfortunately, we're in injury time now, but I want to thank you, Marco. And
I was betting on that.
I want to thank you. I also want to thank Michel Coutuzis, Andreas Evagora, Declan Hill for joining us from Toronto, Canada. And thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.